So let me just talk a little bit about just quickly about why are we doing this? Why are we having these webinars, these relationship webinars? Because we want to help you, those of you who are seeking and desiring to get married. As simple as that. We want your marriages to be successful, inshallah. And so our aim is to provide insights, strategies, tips, advice, whatever we can to help you along that journey, particularly if it's at a first-time marriage. It can be daunting and in some cases downright frightening when you've not been through that before. And we want to avoid pitfalls. There are many pitfalls. And one of the biggest pitfalls that we want to avoid is divorce. I was just looking at some statistics, and of course, unfortunately, in American society, 41%, according to one of the latest statistics, 41% of first-time marriages end up in divorce. That is not good at all. And unfortunately, we as in the Muslim community, and I'm speaking globally now, we are unfortunately not far behind. I was just looking at one of the statistics here in Egypt, and it's indicated that the divorce rate for first-time marriages here in Egypt is at 24%, I think, or something like that. That's not good. And this is an increase. And actually, there are many, in the society, the sociologists and other people in the social circles realm are, sounding the alarm that, look, hey, this is not good. And, and obviously there are a lot of reasons for why this is going on and happening, but that's for another time. But why we're doing this, again, as I said, is to help so that we can, inshallah, avoid that. Now, divorce is, of course, it is not haram in Islam for divorce to occur, and it's not shameful either. However, it's not something that is desired. We shouldn't be, that shouldn't be the default. That shouldn't be, I can always get a divorce. And we're going to talk about that, a little bit later on. So we want to avoid that. We want to have happy, because divorce is not a happy scenario for sure. Anyone who's ever been through it, there's nothing happy and pleasant about it at all. So we want to avoid that particular pitfall. So we started off this whole series. The overall theme was sticks and stones may break my bones. This is a nursery rhyme, by the way. Sticks and stones may break, my bones, but words will never harm me. And we said that this is a nursery rhyme that I was taught as a kid, that just to kind of help us to kind of, not feel so bad when people are bullying us or saying mean things to us. But we know that words do harm us. And we talked about in the very first webinar about accountability for what we say, because all of these webinars have been about how we communicate, with one another in our relationships. So we're talking about accountability, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold us accountable for what we say to one another. And again, because depending upon what we say and how we say it, it can have really damaging impact and effect upon the person that we're in the relationship with, and of course upon the relationship itself, or the marriage, in and of itself. Because obviously this is where we want our relationships, in terms of our young brothers and sisters who are seeking, getting to know one another, that obviously to end up in marriage. So we started off with accountability. So today we're going to talk about responsibility. And so who's responsible? Who's responsible for the relationships that we're in? Because sometimes we enter into relationships in terms of marriage, thinking that it's the other person that's supposed to, make it all right. But no, that's not true. It's a two-way street here. We have to own it. We have to own the fact that myself, I am personally responsible for the success or failure of this marriage. This is how we should look at it, at this relationship. We should think of it that way, that I'm going to be responsible. And if both persons have that kind of attitude, then it is less likely that when challenges come, and they will come, and when the tests come, and they will come, that you'll be better equipped from a psychological and mental standpoint, an emotional standpoint, really to deal with the difficulties that inevitably will to come. So you have to own it. You have to say, hey, this is my relationship. In other words, I accept responsibility for this relationship. I expect some not for the total responsibility, but I accept my share, that I have a share in this. So I'm not to say that each one that you're responsible individually for the whole thing. No, but everybody has a share. So when you say, okay, I'll own it, meaning I do own that. So let's look at some points here I just wanted to break out and wanted to point out. And again, talk about success or failure. We want our relationships and our marriages to be successful. We don't want them to be failures. But in the meantime, let's not talk about the ultimate failure in terms of divorce, but when there are problems that occur, that we, at the same time, we want to be able to say, okay, where was I in that? What did I do? How did I contribute to that? And also when there's successes, we don't want to, anyone say, no, it was all because of me that everything went well. Well, maybe it was 80% you, maybe it was 20% him or her, or some, greater percentage here and there. And that's how things work, of course. But at the same time, we accept, just as we're very willing to accept success, how willing are we to accept, whenever some difficulty comes, say, oh yeah, I played a part in that. Might have been a small part, might have been no part. But the key is to accept the reality, that maybe I did. At least to ask the question, did I, have something to do with that situation? Also, one of the other things that we want to keep in mind is that when you go into a relationship, you have chosen to go into that particular relationship. Nobody, inshallah, is being forced to do that. And in the marriage ceremony, one of the key elements of the marriage is that the imam asks, particularly the woman, is anyone being forced? Are you, sister, being forced, to marry this person? And no person, whether they're the man or the woman, should be forced. And of course, alhamdulillah, I don't think we find that. I hope we don't find that. So in that case, I think then we should be saying, look, I have chosen, once we get married, and going into the marriage, and say, I have chosen to go into this relationship. I have chosen, it was my choice to marry this particular person. That's my choice. So in making that choice, you said this was your choice, nobody's forcing you, then I have, again, some responsibility to this particular relationship. And so the other point I wanted to make about on that particular subject is, so, and we're going to talk about this in some more detail a little bit later, but when we do run into a problem, if we have the right attitude and mindset about it, then we won't be so quick to run when there's a problem. One of the things that's most alarming now that I'm hearing is that too many of our Muslim couples, young Muslim couples, are just opting to get out right away. I know of one too many, let me put it that way. Personally, people that I know personally get married. They had a nice engagement, it seemed, and wasn't too long, wasn't too short. I think they got a chance to know one another, good families, good brother, good sister, all of these kinds of things, got married, beautiful ceremony in the masjid. Everybody was Allahu Akbar, mashallah, tabarakallah. It was wonderful. Didn't last a year. I don't think it got past 6 months, to be honest with you. What happened? Allahu Alam. I don't know what happened. I can't say what happened. Maybe there was some really legitimate, but we can't run at every time that something happens that we don't like. We should try to fix it, not nix it. All right. So let's try to fix whatever the problem is. Let's try to fix it, and let's don't nix it. So let's don't be quick to run when there's a difficult. Don't say, oh, I didn't know about that. I didn't, nobody told me about that, or I wasn't prepared for that. So I'm out of here. No, we have to get rid of this kind of a throwaway mentality. This is a Western mindset, by the way. This is clearly a Western mindset. This just throw somebody away. Oh, don't need you anymore. You're out. And believe me, and maybe at another time we'll have another webinar all about the impact of the Western mindset on our relationships and on our families. It is devastating, but that's another story. But that whole idea of, okay, I can go find somebody else. This is not what we want. This is not good for us. This is not good for us at all. So we'll talk about a little bit more on this, this running that unfortunately too many of our younger brothers and sisters are doing. That should not be done. And I'm going to say something, and I know it may be a little, maybe some pushback that some people might give, because I'm an old timer, I'm old school. So my mother and father, they had problems, and I know they had problems as I got older and to a young adult and an older adult. I realized they had problems, but divorce, I don't think ever came in their mind. And almost, I'm trying to, now that we're talking about it, I'm trying to remember anyone in my family. I'm talking about now my aunts and uncles, and I don't remember any of them getting divorced. Again, now I know someone is going to say, well, maybe things were so bad they should have. Maybe. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, because again, divorce is halal. It is permissible to do. But people weren't quick to run. This is my point. Because they considered other factors. Because in those days, people raised families. That was part of the primary reason for getting married. We want to raise a family. All right? And they started raising their family. Then they had to realize, well, what happens now? Once you have a family, then you start talking about breaking up the family. Then back to this whole Western mindset and construct, because the way the West, particularly America, is constructed now, all from Shaitan, believe me, it makes it easy to do that. You see, because now a woman can easily say, but I can go get a place of my own. I can live by myself. I don't need you. Man said, I don't need you. I can go do whatever. When the society itself in those times weren't like that. We need to get back to that, at least into that kind of a thinking, and also people considered what's going to be the impact upon the children, if there are children involved. What is the impact upon the children? So all of these things play into that, into what happens in terms of the relationship, the marriage, and in the broader picture, the family and the community as well. So again, we don't want to be, we don't want to be runners, right? We want to be people who fix things. So the other point I wanted to make is you need to agree, if you're in the process of getting married and you're talking with someone, agree how you're going to fix problems. That when problems come up, this is something you should talk about. Okay, so sweetheart, when we run into a problem, how do you see us solving problems? Each of these should answer that question. How are we going to do that? Now, some may say, oh, come on, it's the man. Of course, he has the final word. So what's the issue? No, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. So for our brothers, we know that we just don't say jump, and expect our wives to say how high. No, that's not the way it works. We have a model in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he consulted his wives, and we know some really, really extreme situations. I mean, some really, tense issues where the Prophet sallallahu constructed and listened to, even when he didn't consult. When they just came to him and say, "Hey, I think you should do such and such." We know Hudaybiyah. We know that. So we should, again, agree on, sit with one another in our getting to know each other process. This is one of the questions you should ask, and you should find out and agree upon. This is how we're going to do that. Try to come to some agreement so that you want so that you don't get into the marriage, problem comes, and now you're trying to figure out, oh, okay, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna figure this out? How are we gonna work this thing out? Because he has one idea and I have one idea, she has one idea, I have another idea, and you don't know, how we're gonna approach it. Whereby if you agree in the beginning, this is the mechanism, this is the process that we will use. Whatever that process, I'm not going to tell you what the process is. You have to agree. You have to come up with a process that's good for the two of you. This is how we are going to address problems when those problems come. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And the next slide says, avoid blaming. This is a biggie, because this is something easy to do. This is when we are really either afraid or unwilling to face the reality of where we are in the relationship or any kind of difficulty that we may have. So the thing is to point the finger and say, no, it was your problem. If you hadn't done such and such a thing, then we wouldn't be in this mess. So we don't want to point any fingers. We're going to avoid the blaming, because that's because blaming is not going to solve any problems whatsoever. So you're going to avoid doing that, or blaming each other for something. And you may really be pointing the finger in the wrong direction. So what you really want to be able to do in that scenario is just to take a step back, take a look at, where you are and say, okay, what can we do here about that? And that's what we're going to. So let's go on to the next slide, because now we'll get into maybe to the heart of some of that. Like, be problem solvers. Develop that kind of a mindset that, hey, and maybe kind of use it away. Okay, look, we have an issue here. We have a problem. Let's solve that problem. And let's look at it this way. If you were going on vacation, for instance, all right, and the airline said, oops, that flight has canceled, or we can't connect on that particular leg. I think most of us, because we want to go on that vacation, because we're looking forward to that vacation. We're going to have a great time, inshallah, on that vacation. We're going to sit down and we're going to try to solve that thing and figure that thing out, right? Figure out that itinerary. We're going to get the best itinerary. Oh, that hotel is not available. Oh, what about the other hotel? And we're going to work all of that out. Alhamdulillah, we got something that we think that'll work for us. So why not be problem solvers? And that kind of a mindset, all right? So that it will be easier then when you look at it from that standpoint, is that we have a problem. So then you have to ask yourself some questions is, okay, how can we fix this? So if you run into an issue, with your loved one, you have to sit and say, okay, we got a problem. You have to acknowledge first that there's a problem. Then you have to ask, the other, how, dear, can we fix this? How can we fix this? And then you have a discussion about what you believe, each of you, how you feel the best way to go about fixing, the problem. Also, you can ask the questions, and I think this is a good thing for all of us to keep in mind, is that when your loved one is going through something difficult, and even if it's mundane, even if it's not something that is personal, emotional, or psychological, or whatever, maybe it's just something mundane, ask, how can I help? How can I help? What can I do to help to make things better, inshallah? So, sometimes just asking the question, makes a person feel better. If there's some tenseness, brings down, the tenseness in the room, so to speak. So we want to be problem solvers. We want to look for ways that we can fix the problem and not to make the problem greater. So now we have to go back to one of the things we talked about in one of the first webinars is about, our sincerity, Nia. Because if we're sincere about having a strong relationship, then this won't be hard. So the first thing, for sure, you got to bring that in. So wait a minute. I made a commitment, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you make that, that nikah, the name of Allah is being invoked. And following the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being invoked. So then that should come to play, inshallah. He said, wait a minute. First of all, is there anything specifically to this that Islam addresses? Does Islam address this thing specifically? If it does, you apply it. Is there a sunnah that we need to apply? You apply it. If it's a gray area, then you have to, maybe consult some other people, find out, okay, what about this? What about that? Here's what we're going through. You do your research, and then it's, it's two aspects come into play. There is istikhara and istishara. Istikhara, of course, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you, through this. And istishara meaning asking other people, because first we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and after asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we also seek out the help of those who perhaps are more knowledgeable and more experienced in the issues and in the things that we're trying to do. All right. So this is what we want to do here. So part of this niyyah, this sincerity, because you go into it, really you have to say, oh Allah, I want this to work. And Allah, give me the tawfiq, give me the ability, give me the strength, give me whatever I need to, to make it good for myself and for my partner, for my mate. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Now again, doesn't mean that everything is it won't result in the worst, but we want to avoid that, and we want to at least minimize the difficulties that are likely to come in relationships in the beginning. All right, so let's go on to the last slide. So in terms of the straight talk, and this is really key. There's an ayah in the Quran where Allah, in the translation, says, speak a word directed to the right or to the point, or in some translations, speak a word with integrity. And if you read some of the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, it talks about honesty and integrity and truthfulness and these kinds of things. One of the things that we have to do, of course, in this straight talk is be straight up with one another. Do not beat around the bush. Now that doesn't mean that we're rude, does not mean that we are harmful to people, that mean, no, it just means that whatever needs to be said is that we say it. But you say it with compassion, we say it with love, we say it with kindness, but at the same time, but with directness, because we want to get somewhere, because we want a good resolution to whatever we are facing. All right. So, alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And so you'll find this kind of in the sort of SSF, this ayah that makes the reference to that. So this is all about the honesty and the integrity and the trustworthiness that when in our words and our speaking to one another, now trying to, now relating and communicating with one another, we're going to be sure, inshallah, that we're going to be honest with one another. All right. So, so as I said, so be honest about, what you're looking for. So this is the other thing. Now, so let's fast, back up in terms of you're in the process of talking with someone. So, and let's say you're talking to a matchmaker. So one of our BeyondChai matchmakers. So number one, you want to be honest with him or her about what is that you're looking for. And then when you match with someone, be honest with that person. Hey, listen, here's what I'm looking for in a man, in a spouse, in a mate. This is what and be honest. This is what I'm looking for. Don't be afraid. See, sometimes we're afraid that if we are truthful, that that won't play well. That person will back out and say, "Oh no, I gotta go." But hadn't you rather do that? Hadn't you rather that someone back away because they can't maybe, that's not where they are? Then you hold back, and that's something that's dear to you, but then you go head on with it, and then now the problem comes because you hope that it'll be all right. And that's what we kind of tell ourselves sometimes, don't we? We kind of tell ourselves when we don't do or say, when we're not as straightforward as we should, we say, oh, but we tell ourselves, we try to convince ourselves actually that I think it'll work out. I think it'll work out. I think it'll be okay. And that's not likely, to be the case. So you have to be honest. So when you're speaking to your prospective, mate. Be honest about what it is that you really want, the things that are key for you, the things that really, really matter for you. The other thing, which is a really, really big thing, is that we don't want to deceive. So, because we talked about honesty and integrity. So while at the same time that we want to be truthful and honest, we don't want to be deceived. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in an authentic hadith, he said, "Men gashana falaysa minna. Men gashana falaysa minna." Those who deceive us are not one of us, are not from us. So we don't want to do that. We want to be among the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, among the truthful. I don't mean it takes you out of Islam. It means that it's not one of the true believers, the true believer, because the true believer doesn't want to deceive. So I'm going to talk about something that might seem a little funny, but it does happen, unfortunately, when couples are getting together and they are getting to know one another. And sometimes there's some deception that goes on. So I'm going to bring up something that that sometimes people laugh at. And oftentimes it happens with both men and both women. So we're going to be equal opportunity here. But we'll talk about the women, and we'll talk about the men as well. So, okay, so let's talk about how a deception could come about. That could have serious implications. And so let's say one of the things could be is that, okay, so sister, if you wear false eyelashes, and I'm not talking about halal or haram, but false eyelashes, I'm just saying if you do, and you meet the brother that you're interested in marriage, and all he sees you throughout the whole time that you're interacting with him is you're looking nice and pretty and all of that, the false eyelashes, and then marriage comes and oops, what happened? Who's this woman? You understand what I'm saying? That is a deception. That is absolutely a deception. The same thing could be with a brother, for instance. Because some men, when they're young, my son, my youngest son is one of those. Both of my sons, actually, they start balding and graying, at an early age, And so what my youngest son does is he uses some dye, which is fine, which is allowed to do. But hey, if you come there looking all young and, hey, and shouldn't you say, but sister, I need to let you know that, I have started, graying, prematurely, so I do put a little dye in here and whatever in my beard. She said, "Oh, okay, inshallah, that'll be okay." She might say, "Well, listen, I like a little gray." You might be surprised. So deception can take place, and that's just on that level. But believe me, this has happened in a number of cases, and when the couple has got married, it has created quite a bit of a problem either way, because what was presented was not what the actuality. So we don't want to be deceitful. Another thing that we want to be very clear about too is about, and this is in the realm of being honest, and maybe it could even be deceitful, is that if there are things that need to be disclosed, you need to disclose it. Now, that's once you get into the point where, looks like, marriage might become a possibility here, alhamdulillah. Then if there are things that need to be disclosed, you disclose it if it really needs, maybe some particular illness, you know what I mean? And maybe some of these things might even need to be disclosed fairly early on, but that you need to kind of weigh that, have an advisor or someone that advise you, when at what stage do you, maybe make that disclosure, but it needs to be disclosed. You don't hold it back. If it's something that is, really pertinent, particularly like some particular health issue, you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to keep that to yourself. Nor the other side of this coin, which is also has happened, which we have to, advise our young brothers and sisters with, is nor do you disclose your failings. Meaning, when I say personal failings, you don't disclose your personal failings. You though some sin. Let me just be direct. maybe you fell into some error and into some sin. We don't disclose our sins. You're not talking. We're not Catholics. we don't go to the priest and make confession. No, this is the worst thing you want to do. The worst thing you want to do. I have a very good friend of mine, actually, my best friend, told me one time. He said, I would have married such and such a person. So this is a long, long, long time ago. He said, but then someone told me. Now, this is not even the sister herself. Told me something about her, her physical characteristics, that at that point really just turned me off. But he said later on, but I would have married her. I would have dealt with that. Now, of course, this is something that probably, I don't know what it was. So, I have no idea. And he didn't say, and alhamdulillah, he didn't tell me, and rightfully so. But the point is that he didn't have an opportunity to deal with the situation. You know what I mean? At the level in which he could have. And, it resulted in, them not married. I mean, but the point we wanted to make here is that, yeah, you want to be honest, but some people take that to an extreme and they become too honest. So you don't tell everything. We all have things in our past that we need to leave in the past. And if there's no need to talk about it, there's no need to talk about it. There's no need to reveal that. This is something that I get quite often, as a matter of fact, say, should I tell him or her such and such and such and such? And depending upon what it is, we oftentimes it's no, there's no need to do that. As a matter of fact, subhanAllah, a young client, may Allah help her, but she was just so distraught over some thoughts that she was having. Just thoughts. Hadn't done a thing. She had not done anything. But Shaitan was messing with her mind. And she was saying, but, should I tell when I get married? Shouldn't I tell him that I'm having these thoughts? I'm like, no way. This is from the Shaitan. No way. The thing you want to do now before you get married is to deal with those thoughts, to get rid of these thoughts. And so obviously, putting strategies in place to get rid of the Shaitan, actually. I mean, in terms of the activeness of the Shaitan in creating those particular thoughts. So no. I mean, over and over again, I was saying, no, you cannot. There's no need to do that. There's no need to do that. Let's deal with the issue. Why would you mess up a relationship by telling someone about something about your past or some thoughts that you've had, un-Islamic thoughts? Why would you do that? There'll be no need to do that. So we want to do those things that would build a relationship as opposed to bring up, that would fracture the relationship. So, alhamdulillah, so all of we are saying tonight is to help us to, inshallah, to think about where we are, where we want to go, where we want to be in our relationships, and specifically in our marriages. Inshallah, Allah will bless us and all of us with good and strong marriages, inshallah. May Allah, give us the strength and the ability to do the right thing and to have, strong niyyah and good, akhlaq. So one of the things that we all need to work on, myself included, first and foremost, is work on our character, to build good character. And of course, the best way to do that is to look at the character of the Prophet Muhammad SAW, because he's the perfect example. Look at the character of those that were around him, and particularly as it related to how they interacted with one another. And if we follow that model, inshallah, I think we can avoid many of the pitfalls that, that we find that many of our young brothers and sisters falling into. So may Allah give us, tawfiq. May Allah give us the ability to do the right thing at the right time, to say the right thing at the right time. May Allah bless us in all of our relationships. Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.